Hey everybody, it's Vanessa. I wanted to hop on here and share a tutorial for some appliques, for how to make some appliques. I did one a few months ago, and this is just going to be a more beefed up version of that tutorial, where I'm going to show how to make multiple types of applique with different types of fabric. So there are some fabrics that are better for applique than others, but you can pretty much make an applique or a fabric patch out of any fabric. So I have a few different types of fabric here that I'm going to use, and this will also show that you can use different parts of the fabric that you may not think would be good for an applique or a fabric patch, but that you can totally use for that. So when you're making fabric patches or appliques, you need your fabric, and I've already pre-cut a few pieces here that I'm going to use to make these particular appliques today. So we've got this piece here, which just looks like a scrap, but I'm going to make a patch out of the rose. This is another piece that it's not her entire body the way it shows up on the print, and you would think, well, I can't really make a patch out of that, but you totally can. So we're gonna make one there. This one is pretty much the full applique, but if you notice, it's on the selvage end of the fabric. So you've got the little ridges here, and you might think, well, I can't really use that one either because it's got the selvage end, but you totally can. So I thought I would show you how to make one out of that. And then we've got a couple pieces here. This is a peacock print, and it's a very heavily printed fabric. And then there's another one here with some sugar skulls. So a few different types of fabric, and you'll be able to see that you can definitely use each one of these to make some really fun fabric patches. So you'll need the fabric. You will need your, these are, of course, my fabric scissors that I use just to cut fabric only. And then I also have a pair of scissors that I've designated just for, oops, you can't see them. I have some scissors that are designated just for applique. So those are here. You'll need an iron. You'll need an ironing board, or in my case, I just have my little ironing square that I use. And then you will need the most important part in order to make it an actual applique, which is the bonding agent. And I just use Heat and Bond Light. Because I normally sew my patches on, but the Heat and Bond Light works great also for patches that you're not going to sew on. So there's also a version of this that is Heat and Bond Ultra Hold. I usually don't use that one, but you definitely can. So, but it's the same. It's a bonding agent, and that's what's important. So that's it. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to need to cut the Heat and Bond to the size of your appliques. So we're going to start with these here. All you're going to do is so don't use the fabric scissors on the Heat and Bond. Use the non-fabric scissors. So usually what I like to do is I just like to lay out my pieces on the Heat and Bond, which I'm going to do here. You will, I'm going to say waste in quotes, but you will waste some of the Heat and Bond, but honestly, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You can, if the pieces are big enough, you can absolutely save them and use them for maybe smaller patches. But don't worry about it. Don't be afraid to have a little bit of Heat and Bond left over. So then I just usually like to make sure that I have enough for the patches that I'm cutting. We're going to start with her, and all you do is you just make sure that the part of the Heat and Bond that's rough is the part that is going to that's the part that's going to be ironed on to the fabric. So the rough side of the Heat and Bond is going to face up, and the wrong side, which is the back of the fabric, is going to face down and lay right on top of that rough part. So all you do is you just cut enough to cover the piece of fabric that you're going to be making the patch out of. So this is the fun thing about applique, is that you can, you know, really let your creative side come out. So I do have this piece left over, and it's a pretty good sized piece, so I think that one I'll save for a future project. So once you have the heat and bond underneath your fabric, then you're just going to flip it over. You're going to take your iron. I always put my iron on the hottest setting, which is usually the linen cotton setting, and that's what it's on now. And then you're just going to go over it for a few seconds. You want to make sure that it is completely bonded to the fabric. So I don't know, I would say maybe 10, 15, 20 seconds. And again, it's going to be very hot because that setting is the hottest one on the iron. So you need to give it a few seconds before you handle it. Let it cool off. So usually I'll let that one cool, and then I'll cut out, if I have other fabric patches that I'm making, I'll cut the other ones out. Now this one just kind of looks like trash, but you can definitely get a decent patch from the flower. And again, the rough side of the fabric is going to face up. That's the side that's going to get ironed. That the rough side is going to go on top of the wrong side of the fabric. So there's patch number 2, and then the last one of the senoritas is going to be this one. And again, it might look like, you know, she's kind of not intact because I cut one of the other ones next to her, but you can definitely make a patch out of this one as well. So now, one thing that you want to make sure that you are wary of is that you just want to make sure that you don't have any glue showing on the side of any of the fabric, because when you flip it over to iron, the glue part that's not underneath your fabric is going to stick to your ironing board or your ironing pad, and it's just messy, and you know, sometimes it's a little tricky to get off, and you don't want to do that. So just try to make sure that none of the glue is showing. All right, and same thing, we're just going to iron for a few seconds and let it sit while it cools off. Okay, so the first applique was the senorita here, and so now you might say, well, what do I do? I have been cutting appliques for a long time, and I tend to like a very organic look to them. So I kind of cut with a lot of curves. I don't do a lot of hard edges. So that's just me. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to get rid of this little piece of the cactus, and I'm going to just cut right at the edge of her hat. I don't want a lot of the background of the fabric print showing on this one. On some I do, but on this one I don't. So I'm just following the line of her hat as closely as possible. So you just kind of have to try to keep your hand steady. You don't want to have a lot of stops and starts. Same thing with her arm. Now when it comes to the flower, something like the flowers, again, I try to just kind of go with it. There's no lines or anything like that. I don't want it to be not proportioned on one side, because if you notice the flower on this side, since again it was at the selvage edge, there wasn't a whole lot to work with. It did cut the print off a little, so we kind of have a little bit of an unbalanced applique. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to trim off more of this rose on this side so that it looks a little bit more balanced. It looks a little better. I mean, what you could also do is just eliminate the roses altogether. I think it's fine. It's really your preference, and that's the fun of making appliques, that it allows you to be creative. So there is that one there. Here's the one that's the flower. This one's a little bit tricky because it looks like there's something right on top of it. I think it's a piece of a saddle, but you can still use this. So I just like to cut out the piece that doesn't look like it belongs. And then for this flower, I am just trying to follow along. So, you know, there you go. That would be great on, it's just as an accent applique. Maybe if you use a larger one, you could use this as an accent. So that's why I don't discount those. And then this one here, like I said, most of her is cut off, but you can absolutely still use her to make a really fun patch. So this one would be good for a decoupage applique, which is, I don't know if really that's a thing, but that's what I call it. It's basically like a layered applique where you're layering a bunch of different appliques together. So again, I tend to cut a lot of curves. So, you know, this would be, like I said, good for a layered applique. Still totally useful. So that is the Senoritas. Just gonna scoot those out of the way for a minute, and we're gonna talk about this print here. So it looks like a lot of print, like you really can't get, you know, a good applique out of it, but you absolutely can. And what I'm gonna focus on are the peacocks. So there's a peacock here, and then there's a larger one here. And by all means, keep the rest of the fabric. You can probably still get some appliques out of it. There are some really pretty florals. So I guess my point is don't discount fabrics that have a lot of print to them. And actually this would be a good use for our scrap piece. That guy will fit nicely there. And again, rough side on top, the wrong side of the fabric goes on top of the rough side of the heat and bond. And then again, you're just going to cut so that none of the glue is showing, because we don't want to get that glue on our ironing. I'm sorry, I'm tongue-tied. On our ironing board. So we're just gonna iron. Again, the hottest setting. And one more. This is a larger peacock. I am going to need to cut a little bit more of my heat and bond. The nice thing is you can absolutely save the pieces for smaller appliques, so it's not really wasteful. Some of the pieces that are really small you will throw out, but you know, if they're a decent size, then you should be able to reuse them, so there's not a lot of waste. So again, we're just cutting the sides. I'm going to scoot that over. Just try to keep all of the little fabric remnants off of your ironing surface, because they can tend to get caught in the glue. So just try to keep things tidy. Okay, so this was our first one. And again, I'm going to focus on the peacock. Now sometimes you can cut the appliques and they might not work. So I've never made any appliques out of this fabric before. So again, it may be a dud, but I'm willing to give it a shot, especially if it's scrap fabric. You know, why not, right? Just give it a shot, and it might be good, it might not be, but so here, like I said, I like curves. I don't like a lot of sharp edges. So, okay, so there's one, and you can still probably cut some appliques out of that, so I'm just gonna set that aside. And then this print is the larger peacock. So same print. It's called Aptly Peacock by Dear Stella. August run for Dear Stella. It's really pretty print. Okay, so this one is just a larger version of that first one. Okay. Alright, and there we go. So actually I think those turned out pretty cute. So we've got larger peacock, smaller peacock. So you can definitely make appliques out of busier prints. And last but definitely not least is this fun Calavera print, or sugar skulls. So there's actually quite a few appliques that you can make out of this print. I am going to focus on this one here. So I am going to sacrifice a few of these guys for that one. And then we can also make one out of this one here. Okay, so just these two. And this is why it's good to save your scraps, because I can absolutely use these scraps for this application. So I'm going to use the larger one for this larger sugar skull. And since the piece of Heat and Bond is already smaller than my fabric, I don't really need to trim any of the excess. And then I'm going to use the smaller piece for the smaller one. So this one I will need to trim. But usually this is a really quick process. Sometimes I just sit in front of the TV and cut appliques. It can be relaxing sometimes. Okay, so there we go. We're gonna just iron that on. Let it cool. While that's cooling, we will work on the other one. Okay, so now I like the idea of getting the leaves in, but we're gonna see if it works or not. Sometimes, you know, it just doesn't look right, so I might trim that down if I have to, but I'm gonna go with it for now. So again, I like a very rounded applique. Okay, so actually I think that looks nice. And then the smaller one, I am going to leave a little bit of a border around it. Not a whole lot, but you absolutely, you know, you don't have to. Like I said, the beauty of cutting appliques is you are just able to do it however you like. So if you don't like a border and you just want to cut it right against the outline of the object that you're making the applique from, then you do you. Okay, so there you have it. We've got several different appliques, several different types of fabric, even some where you might think they're throwaways, but they totally are not. So there we go. We've got them all. And like I said, it doesn't take too much time. It's a great use of scraps. And now you've got some fun iron-ons that you can use to decorate really anything from clothes to tote bags to kitchen towels, really anything that you want to do with them. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. Thank you guys. Have a great one. Bye.